Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. For the last 2 days, much of the Northeast and Midwest looked like this. The haze of the sun, a thick smog over an entire region of this country that is very much not used to it. Unlike the Mountain West, which lives with forest fires, this kind of smoke settling over the eastern seaboard has felt dystopian and new. In fact, it's not just your imagination if it feels that way to you, if you live in that part of the country. The air quality index in parts of New York City yesterday was over 170, which is the worst it has been in 14 years. The thing about bad air quality is there's no way to escape it. No matter how much money you have, where you live, in the end, everyone's got to breathe the same air. It was a real wake-up call yesterday for everyone in the parts of the country covered with this smoke, breathing that same air that emanated from wildfires thousands of miles away in the West. Turns out we share the same climate with them. Right now, there are more than 80 fires burning across 13 states, many more burning across Canada. And as this incredible New York Times interactive map shows, the smoke from those fires is why the air is so hazy in these parts of the country, here on the eastern seaboard and the Midwest. The biggest fire in the country this year is the Bootleg Fire in Oregon. You can see it there on the map. It's about the size of Los Angeles, has burned more than 340,000 acres of forest. It is so large that it is generating its own weather, like fire clouds that manage to create their own lightning and even fire tornadoes. The Bootleg Fire, like so many out west, is fueled by the drought and last month's record heat. You may remember that June was the hottest June on record in nearly 130 years. Records were broken across the Northwest with multiple days topping 100 degrees, completely unseen before. In Oregon and Washington, nearly 200 people lost their lives to the heat. Across the West, thousands more are now in the path of fast-moving and dangerous wildfires. And it's not just happening in the U.S. Siberia, which, if you know one thing about it, you think it's cold, famous for its freezing temperatures, is experiencing its worst fire season in memory. 4 million acres burned, with villages already evacuating their children because of the dangerous smoky air. In Germany last week, hundreds were killed and dozens of towns destroyed by the worst flooding in 1,000 years. Tens of thousands of people are still without gas and power. In China, another once-in-a-thousand-year event, nearly a year's worth of rain falling in just 3 days, causing flooding that was so intense it left passengers trapped on a subway car as water poured in from all sides. Hundreds of people had to be rescued. A dozen passengers died. Extreme temperatures, extreme wetness, extreme drought, extreme weather events like this, as we've said many times, a new normal. A new normal that has been brought to us by decades of inaction, led chiefly by fossil fuel interests, the politicians they donate to, an American right and American media devoted to denying science and opposing change while speeding us towards this disaster and worst. This is the context for one of the big news stories of this week, which is, and it seems sort of weird and small in relation to what I just showed you, but the fight over the bipartisan infrastructure bill. You may have seen today there was a procedural vote just to begin debate on that bill that failed because Republicans filibustered it. Even though the bill omits a ton of what President Biden had pledged to support on the campaign trail and early in his presidency to fight climate change, it does include $47 billion to help communities become more resilient to disasters and severe weather caused by a warming planet, and up to an additional $530 billion to support electric vehicles and public transport, energy and tax credits, and some other climate-friendly policies. Now, sounds like a lot of money, I guess, until you remember the Trump tax cuts alone cost the government $2.3 trillion, okay? Those tax cuts, which, by the way, continue to fuel inequality and produce a world in which the richest man on earth seeks to leave it with aims of polluting a new frontier.
We need to take all heavy industry, all polluting industry, and move it into space and keep Earth as this beautiful gem of a planet that it is. Now, that's going to take decades and decades to achieve, but you have to start.
I saw that quote yesterday and 100% thought it was a parody, but that's what he said. Now, the rest of us couldn't get on a rocket ship yesterday to escape what's going on. This is the one planet we got. We're all in it together, whether Bezos thinks he can get away or not. What is going to happen as the disasters intensify in ways that we've only begun to get our heads around is that people are going to start moving to escape climate catastrophe. As I wrote in a piece for the 25th anniversary of MSNBC, which is on MSNBC.com, in the last decades in the U.S., we've seen a steady internal migration driven less by persecution and deprivation and more by weather. And not the weather born of climate change, but rather people choosing to leave winter, moving to the Sun Belt and Pacific Northwest to get away from harsh winters. Well, guess what? A lot of those places that people have moved to over the last few decades are the ones getting rocked by our weird new climate. And we're probably going to start seeing massive migrations again. As the climates we have acclimated to and habituated to change radically, in some cases, probably rendering places in our own country essentially unlivable. All of this, what you're seeing there, this is what's happening right now, day by day by day, while the Republican Party fiddles. And the right-wing media whips up a frenzy against an imagined threat or tries to get people not to take their COVID vaccine. Fires are scorching the West. The smoke is settling across the country. And as the New York Times put it, no one is safe.